Hello, everybody. It's Bigfoot Michigan Rob back for another classic Sasquatch encounter. This is part two. Well, actually, it's take two. For those 20 of you that liked the video I put out, well, guess what? There was no audio until a comment was left. So the whole video, I put it on YouTube. People liked it or whatever. But you know what? You didn't hear it. But thanks for the likes anyway. Go back and re-like it, rewatch it. Well, you probably didn't watch it because you would have said, there's no audio, Rob. So anyway, this is a classic story, a Bigfoot abduction in 1928, much like the one in the same area, a similar area, back, I believe it was in 1921. This is about Muchalat. I think that's how you say it, Muchalat, Muchalat. Well, that's what I'm going with. Hope you guys like this classic. The classics are important. We should all take heed to these stories. A lot of parallels in all these stories. The story of Muchalat Harry, Peter Byrne. According to the Indians, there was once a large number of Bigfoot living on Vancouver Island, a large island, 12,408 square miles in area, off the west coast of British Columbia. The Indians knew about them, feared them, and respected them, but granted that they were harmless. One of the Indians of the Nootka tribe, who lived in Nootka in 1928, claims to have been carried off by them and held captive for some time. The story told by Father Anthony Tierhar of Mount Angel Abbey in Oregon is a curious one. Now, you guys, these stories are all told by our First Nations. That's why I really respect these stories. Father Anthony, a much-loved missionary priest who traveled the west coast of Vancouver Island for many years, was living at Nootka at the time of the story and knew Muchalat Harry very well. Muchalat Harry was a trapper and which was something of a rarity amongst his fellow tribesmen. He was, according to Father Anthony, a tough, fearless man of excellent physique. In the course of his trapping, he spent many long weeks in the forest alone, something that the average Indian did not do in those days. The Indians of the coast were apparently a rather timid people, and they seemed to regard the deep forest as the home and territory of the Bigfoot. When they went into the deep inland forest for any reason, they never went alone. Muchalat Harry was different from other Indians. He went in the forest alone and feared nothing. Late one autumn, Muchalat Harry set off for the woods with his traps and camping gear. His plan was to set out a trap line and stay in the woods for several months. He headed for his favorite hunting area, the Kenuma River, at the end of the Tulupena Inlet. From Nakuta, he paddled his own canoe to the mouth of the Kenuma. Then he cached the canoe and headed upstream on foot. Approximately 12 miles upstream, he made his base camp, and after building himself a lean-to, started to put out his trap line. One night, while wrapped in his blankets and clad only in his underwear, he was suddenly picked up by a huge male Bigfoot and carried off into the hills. He was not carried very far, probably a distance of about 2 or 3 miles. When daylight came, he was able to see that he was in a sort of camp, under a rock, actually a rock shelf, and surrounded by some 20 Bigfoot. They were of all sexes and sizes. For some time, they stood around him and stared at him, the males to the front of the curious group, females behind, and the young ones to the rear. Muchalat Harry was frightened at first, and his fear grew to horror when he noticed, he said, the large number of bones lying around the campsite. When he saw these, he was convinced that the Bigfoot were going to eat him. The Bigfoot did not harm him in any way, however. Occasionally, one came forward and touched him, as if feeling him, and when they discovered that his skin was loose, in fact, it was his woolen underwear, several came forward and pulled at it gently. While they looked at him and examined him, Muchalat Harry sat with his back to the rock wall and did not move. He was cold and he was hungry, but his thoughts were only on escape. Sometime in the late afternoon, curiosity on the part of the Bigfoot seemed to slacken, and with most of the Bigfoot out of camp, probably food gathering, he had thought. There came the opportunity that he needed. He leapt to his feet and ran for his life, never looking back. He ran downhill toward where he guessed the river to be, and sure enough, he soon came to his campsite. It must have been blind panic. He bypassed his camp and ran for 12 miles to where his canoe was cached at the mouth of the Kenuma. Father Anthony describes the story of Muchalat Harry's arrival at Nuka as follows. It was probably 3 in the morning. He and his brother Benedictines were asleep and the village was quiet. Suddenly, there was a series of wild cries from the waters of the inlet. Lights were lit, and he and others hurried to the water's edge. There, near frozen and exhausted in his canoe, lay Muchalat Harry. He was barefoot and clad only in his wet, torn underwear, and he paddled his canoe through the winter night 45 miles from the mouth of the Kenuma River. Father Anthony and his companions carried the almost lifelike form or lifeless form up the water's edge. It took 3 weeks to nurse Muchalat Harry back to sanity and good health. Father Anthony, who took him into his own care, did the nursing and said that during the course of the 3 weeks, Muchalat Harry's hair turned to pure white. So this guy aged. He was definitely terrified, escaped, thought that he got away with his life. This is quite the tale. The story of the kidnapping came out slowly. At first, Muchalat Harry would talk to no one. Then he told Father Anthony what had happened, and later he told others. When he was fully recovered to health, he was asked when he planned to go back to collect his belongings, his camping equipment, his pots, his pans, his trap line, and above all, his rifle, at the lean-to on the Kenuma. In 1928, a trap line and all of its pieces must have been worth a great deal to an island Indian. A rifle alone would be regarded as a highly prized possession. But Muchalat Harry never went back to the Kenuma. Not only did he never return, according to Father Anthony, he never left the settlement of Nakuta, never spent or went back in the woods again for the rest of his life. He preferred to lose all of his valuables and probably hard-won possessions or hard-won possessions rather than risk another encounter with Bigfoot. Wow, quite a scary story. I mean, if you guys remember, I did Albert Ostman being picked up and carried away in this same area in British Columbia within a several miles where he escaped. Unlike Muchalat Harry totally not going back in the woods. We've heard stories of people encountering a Bigfoot here in modern day times, right, or current times, not go back looking for this elusive creature because that's how terrified they were. Well, Muchalat Harry, definitely, as described earlier in the story, a big, robust guy, feared nothing. Well, something feared him enough not to get his valuable goods, his rifle, which was prized possessions back in the early 1900s, 1928. So, yeah, he saw something. 20 Bigfoot surrounding you. But they didn't touch him. They did not harm him. Still, he did make the right decision by escaping when he did. And just another classic Bigfoot, and it parallels a lot of these stories, you guys. That's why I put out these Sasquatch classics. The classics are just as important as modern day stories. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Bigfoot Mission Rob. You can see me Tuesday nights, 9 in the East, Beyond BMR. Thursdays, 1 in the East, Brunch with Bigfoot Mission Rob. Please like, please share, and keep coming back. I appreciate each and every single one of you. Bigfoot Mission Rob. Until next time, have a great day.